Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie in Seattle. And remember, if you do want to listen to this show with no ads, join us at patreon.com/The Bittersweet Life Podcast, where for $3 a month, you can listen to the show ad-free. And for $5, if you want to tip in $2 extra, you can hear bonus episodes every month. And I do have to say that the bonus episode Tiffany and I are doing next is going to be hilarious. It's so much fun. We're so excited to record it. We can hardly stand it. So patreon.com/The Bittersweet Life Podcast, or find a link in the show notes. But today, we're going to do a follow-up on a Bittersweet Life moment that I did. It aired on the show on March 25th. It's one that I did, which is rare. Tiffany is usually our Bittersweet Moment person, but I did one recently called What Should We Do with Tangible Memories? And Tiffany thought it would be interesting to follow that up. So if you haven't listened to that moment, it might be worth going back and finding that first. And we're going to continue the discussion about what we do with the physical objects that also hold memories. So you said you wanted to do a follow-up, Tiffany. What was some of the things that you wanted to talk about?
Well, it's not that I had specific things. It was more like it's a topic that interests me. It's a topic that I feel like I need to also tackle in my own life, and I have a really hard time with it. And so I thought that it would be fun to, to just delve a little bit deeper. I really loved listening to that episode, and particularly I loved hearing about your card that you wrote as a child that you ended up getting back, and it had been preserved for decades by the person that you sent it to. So, I mean, and that's kind of like, when you get to that point, it's like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be throwing anything away then.
I think it's always very sweet. And I'm talking to you too, Mom, because I know you're listening and I know you do this. I think it's sweet that people save the letters that you send to them, and that they come back to you. However, for me personally, especially because it's often what comes back to me are cards that I gave people, birthday cards and Christmas cards and things that are just expressing the love that you have for that person. It's not like the back in the day when my mother was writing letters every week to her in-laws because she lived in the center of the country and they never saw each other, and they maybe talked on the phone once a week, and we didn't have all this video and email communication and all this stuff, where she gets those letters back and it's like an archive of her life. It's like every week, the news, what's happening with her children, what's happening in her life. It's fascinating to read again. For me, it's just like a card that tells you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, over and over and over again. And in a way, I don't really want those back. It's not that I hate having them back, but I don't really need them back.
It would be more interesting, a letter, not a card, but a letter that you wrote to a friend telling them about something that was happening in your life.
Exactly.
At that moment.
Exactly. Because, I do write unique Christmas cards to everybody I send one to. I never just print out a form letter and be like, here's what's happening in everybody's life. I write them by hand. And so they are unique, but it's not like it's a dispatch on everything that's happening that I will not remember,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I have a couple of experiences with that. One of them is I have a friend who, unfortunately, we hardly ever see each other anymore, but still care deeply about each other. But unfortunately, we just, how time and distance can just make years pass without talking to someone. But she lived in Germany for many years. She lived in Berlin, and she was moving. I went to visit her there once, and she was moving, I think. She was staying in Berlin, but she was moving to a different place. And she said, I'm just getting rid of everything. I'm just getting rid of almost as much as I possibly can. And she's like, I have this letter from you. Do you want it back? And I mean, part of me was like, you don't want to keep it, but of course she was getting rid of everything. So that was her excuse. And I was like, well, yes, I do. And she opened it up and she read a line from it. She's like, I really love this line. And of course it was something that I had not remembered that I had written, but it was actually, I got to say, really well written. It was a great line. I can't remember it now, but I do have that letter somewhere in my house. I don't really know where, but that was a snapshot of my life. It was my first year living in Rome. And so that was kind of a nice snapshot to have. Now, of course, I kept a journal also during those years. We've talked about this on other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So going back and reading your journals can have a similar feeling, but a letter is different because a letter, when you don't write it with the expectation of ever reading it again.
That's true.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and usually you don't read those letters again. Whereas when you write a journal, you can go back whenever you want and read your journals, but you can't go back and read those letters
Mm-hmm.
unless they somehow come back to you. So it's kind of like a little a surprise. It's kind of a wonderful little gift, actually, I think.
Yeah. Here's a question. So I am a person who does keep letters, although I know I've done a few culls over the years. Because my inclination is to receive a letter, read it, enjoy it, and then put it in a drawer somewhere to save it. That's what I do. But, in certain years, I've gone through and thought, okay, I now have like 6 boxes of letters. Like, I probably should go through and see which ones really say something that's like worth holding on to. And in one of those culls I did, I found a bunch of letters from a friend that I had, a friend I still do have, but a friend that I was very close to when we were teenagers, who had a period when they were suicidal. And a lot of the letters were from her to me talking about this deep sadness, this heartache. And I remembered what a horrible, maybe I've told you this before, but I remembered what a horrible period of time that was for both of us, because for her, because of everything she was going through, for me, because of the anxiety it stirred up, because I wasn't sure what to do, beyond
Oh my gosh.
being a person who's answering the letters, trying to be there for them as much as possible. But, feeling like at any moment I might lose this person and there will be nothing I can do about it. And I was looking through those letters again as I'm doing this call, and I just thought, I don't want to read this ever again. I don't need to feel this way. I don't want to remember her feeling this way. And the truth of the matter is I'll never forget it, of course, but I don't need to read her words about it. And I threw away so many letters from her, so many. And sometimes I think, should I have given those to her? I don't know if she'd want to read them again, but at that same point, it's like, they're long gone now. I'll never give them to her now. But I did throw away a lot of what she had written during a pretty dramatic period of time in her life. I didn't even consider sending them to her when I threw them away. It was more like kind of what I was talking about in that essay on the bittersweet moment. It's more like me deciding what I can let go and still remember, or not want to remember again.
Well, I think when you send a letter to somebody, it's no longer yours. You've given it to them. It's theirs now. It's theirs to decide what to do with.
Mm-hmm.
And you could ask for it back, but there's no guarantees that they're still going to have it.
True.
And if you really desperately don't ever want anything you've written to die or disappear, people used to in the olden days, some people, not everybody obviously, but some certain types of people would copy out their letters and save a copy in their own archives.
Mm.
Never go that far, but
No.
people have done it, and especially like people who are extra important people, heads of state, this kind of thing.
Right. You need to know you're an important person when you're writing that letter.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you probably did the right thing. I think if it was hard for you to relive those letters, it might have been much, much worse for her, and she might not have wanted to even have to make that decision. If she never asked you for them back all these years, then I would assume that she doesn't care.
Well, here's a question. So, for those of you who have been listening to this show for a long time, you might remember that since Tiffany and I have been friends since middle school, but we've spent much of our time not actually being in each other's vicinity, more so than probably any of my other friends. You and I have been at a distance for the vast majority of our friendship, including just, going to school. Like, we knew each other in high school, but we did not go to the same high school. So I did not see you day to day like I saw other friends. And you and I, very famously, at least on this show, used to write really, really long letters to each other, epic letters that we called purple letters. Now, how would you feel if you found that I had thrown away some of your purple letters?
I would be very sad, very sad. I feel like those are special. Those are from, our innocent childhood, a very happy time, I think, at least for me. But I feel like you were pretty happy at that time too, when you were little, like sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth grade,
Hmm.
when we were most actively writing those letters. And yeah, I'd be sad. I'd be sad. You have something to tell me, Katie?
Well, there is one. Remember the one that you wrote that was all loose leaf paper stuffed into a folder?
Kind of.
Kind of it wasn't even a folder that closed. It was like one of those, what are those, like are they manila folders? What are those called when it's just a
I
file folder? It
guess.
doesn't even have like
Oh,
anything to
yeah.
contain it. I may have gotten rid of that one because it was completely unruly. Like it would like just fall apart, and be in totally different order. There are no page numbers. It was mostly full of games.
Okay. All right. I suppose that
Um,
makes it a little better.
yeah, I can't say for sure that I did, but if I was to guess that any one of them is missing, it would probably be that one because
Okay.
it was like I mean, I feel like I even dropped it once, and it was just like everywhere,
Oh, no.
and could not be recontained. And it was one of the longest ones you'd have ever written.
Oh
But
my
you were writing in
goodness.
like big, huge script across multiple pages, try to make it the longest, biggest letter up to that time. So
Yeah.
it's possible that that one doesn't exist anymore. I'm not totally 100% sure, but if I was going to guess, that one's gone.
Well, all of my letters from you, your letters to me of that kind, are all at my mom's house.
So they could be gone.
No, they're not gone. My mom does not throw away my stuff.
Hmm.
She's very good like that. She does have quite a bit of space, so it's easier for her. But in one of the storage rooms in her house are some big plastic bins, and in there are all of my random stuff. And every single time we go there, I want to go through them and
Hmm.
pull out the things that I want to bring home with me. But every single time, I don't have the time, desire, will,
Space.
energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I generally, when we travel, we do have space. I always intentionally leave some empty space in my suitcase to bring back purchases or anything else. So it's not so much about that. It's this storage room. I mean, like most storage rooms, like you got to dig through it. It's not just my stuff in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there, old suitcases and I just like the thought of spending an entire afternoon of my vacation digging through stuff. I'm never tempted enough by the stuff to spend the time to
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. And you know what else? It's emotional. It's
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like emotional like boo or la ha ha, but like it's emotional in the sense that you're revisiting parts of your life in kind of a deep tangible way, and it's maybe emotional is not the right word, but it can be very tiring, very,
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to weigh what to keep and what not to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Now Aurelio is, I'm not going to say a hoarder. That's
Hoarder
too strong a
tendencies.
word.
Yeah.
But he doesn't like to get rid of stuff. And I have to cajole him into getting rid of stuff, even just like random crap toys, like free toys that you get
Mm-hmm.
inside of a Kinder Egg or something. I have to really, really work with him on it because he doesn't want to get rid of anything. He's got these big trucks. I'm talking about like the big old 2 foot long or more trucks, like garbage trucks, other types of like dump trucks, all just he's got these trucks that I mean, they're trucks that 4 and 5 year old boys play with. 10, almost 11-year-old boys do not play with this type of truck.
Mm-hmm.
And they take up a lot of space because they're big. And
Mm.
I mean, over the years, I've gotten him to get rid of maybe two, but he's got 3 or 4 more. And he always just says, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare." Every time I get like frustrated, I'm in his room and I'm trying to like help him tidy up, and we gotta get rid of these trucks. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking these down to the, whatever, the Goodwill. And he goes, "Don't you dare. Don't you dare." So it's the toys are a problem, but also his schoolwork. His schoolwork. Now, Katie, I mean, I know we had a lot of schoolwork when we were little,
Mm-hmm.
but we had like worksheets, I feel like, right? We had the worksheets. They have books that they write in. They're like workbooks, I guess you could call them. But the quantity of books that he has every year is almost unbelievable. Especially like to like my his grandparents' generation. They're like, why does he need all these books? Like we had like one book and it had all the subjects in it and it was all we needed. And in fact, I can tell you that he has, and I mean these are big books, they're full-sized books, and some of them are quite thick. He's got two math books, he's got four Italian grammar books. He's got an English grammar book and like two or three really skinny English workbooks. He's got a religion book and a religion workbook. He's got a science book, a geography book plus an atlas, and he's got history book. I think that's it.
And these are books that, I mean, I get keeping the workbooks, but I think that when we were kids, we had textbooks, but we didn't have them. Like we had them for the year, and then we turned them in at the end of the year.
I feel like we bought them. In high school, you had to buy them, and then you could sell them.
I don't know if that's
the end
true
of
for
the
my
year.
high school. I'm not totally sure. I don't remember having a ton of textbooks in high school, but I can remember elementary school. For us, I mean, I think we had the textbook and we'd have like the accompanying workbook occasionally. You know, in the workbook, obviously, you have to write in, so you're not giving that back. But the textbooks, you just give back.
All of the books they have are workbooks.
Oh, okay.
All of them. And they have a lot of text as well, especially like the history and the geography books. So there's a lot of reading that you do, but the work, like it's all sort of combined with the exception of the English ones. And so he writes in them and luckily they're free in elementary school. Books are free in elementary school, but starting in middle school, you have to pay for them. But I mean, I kept all of his books for second, third, fourth grade. And finally, I think it was last summer, I was like, this is getting ridiculous because I was putting them in these huge bins and they're in my tiny little storage unit in the basement of my building, which is, I mean, it's not big. I cannot keep infinite stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like seeing these bins fill up one after the other with these books. And so I went through them and I didn't get rid of all of them, but I got rid of like most. I saved for his first year, I saved a couple more because I was like, it's his first year, you know, maybe I'll want to remember. But I think I threw away about 30 books, but there's still a bunch in there that eventually I want to get rid of. But not only that, Katie, but they have a notebook for every subject. Now, when we were kids, I mean, we had the Trapper Keeper, right? In elementary school, we had the Trapper Keeper. And then in high school, I remember having a binder. And then there were dividers in the binder. And you just put the papers in and you divide them out by subject. Right? Isn't that what, I mean, I think that's what kids did.
Yeah.
Or you'd have a big, thick spiral notebook, like a really big, thick spiral notebook that had the dividers in it.
Yeah. I think there was a
That is-
period of time when I had one for each subject come high school.
Well, that's how he is. That's how they do it here. You have one for each subject, but you fill them up because you don't turn in your homework, like you don't turn in a piece of paper.
Right.
You turn in the notebook and and your homework is all in the notebook. And then the teacher gives it back to you after she's graded it. And so you don't have just like one Italian language notebook in a year. You probably go through 4 or 5 in Italian and 3 or 4 in math. And then you've got your science and your history and your geography, and it's endless. It's endless. And so I have not thrown any of his notebooks away yet because I'm like, that's all his work, you know, but I'm like, I can't. It's like 20 a year, at least 25 a year for 5 years. And that's just elementary school. And I know that when he's older, he's not going to care.
Well, he might care, given how sentimental he is. Of everybody else, he might actually care. Now, he will not care about what he does not remember that he has.
That's the thing.
So this is your chance to get rid of some of this stuff. You know?
Yeah, you have to be selective. You do have to be selective. And I didn't tell him I threw all those 30 books away. But like if we went down there and we were like, hey, let's look through your old school books, he wouldn't miss those 30 books. Like he wouldn't be like, hey, there should be way more.
Wait a minute. Where? All right, well, let's pause for a moment and take a quick break. Well, here's a question for you. I mean, we live in very different spaces, very different places. You live in a condo, I live in a house. I live in the United States, you live in Italy. United States, especially depending on where you live, maybe less so in Seattle, but in other parts of the country, say like Texas, we're known for having a lot of space, a lot of storage space, a lot of closet space. Some people live in homes that are big enough to have whole rooms where they just store stuff, you know? My house is tiny, so that's not the case here. We have to be a little bit more selective. Your place is even smaller. You have to be even more selective. But like you were just saying, part of the reason why you have all this stuff that you can leave behind in the United States as you live abroad for the last 20 something years is because your mom lives in a space that's big enough to store your stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say your mom ends up downsizing into a smaller space. Let's say, for just this argument, an even smaller space than you live in currently. And you either have to move all that stuff to Italy or you have to get rid of it. What do you think you'll do?
I would probably get rid of most of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there are things I would take. I would take my letters from you.
No, you
And
wouldn't have to take your letters from me.
I would. No,
I'm
I would though.
absolving you.
I would though. I would
This
though.
show is my letter to you. How about that?
I would keep some of them. I definitely keep the one you wrote during my wedding.
Oh yeah. Well, that was a good one.
I think I have that here. I mean, I must
I'm
have
sure
that
you
here.
have
You
that
gave it
there.
to
I
me
gave it
when
to you
I was
there.
living here. Yeah, yeah. I have it here somewhere.
Yeah.
But I would take some stuff, but like yeah, would I take like I made these photo albums when I was in college and shortly after college. I guess it must have been once digital cameras were a thing, but like before we had phones, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
had this great way to like get great photos, but we didn't have like the unlimited storage space of our phones.
Yeah.
So I would print out these photos and I would put them in albums. And I really want to keep those photos also because I don't know if I have them backed up anywhere. I don't know if, I mean, definitely don't have negatives because most of them were, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, digital photos. And I don't think that I have them anywhere digitally. So I would want to keep those photographs because they're memories of some incredible trips that I took and memories that I have. So I mean, I don't want to lose my photographs.
There's nothing heavier, I feel, than a photo album. If you're like thinking about what to bring back.
Oh, I wouldn't bring the album. I would just take the photos out, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, that can take up a lot of space,
For
depending on
sure.
how.
Yeah.
But you don't want to get rid of photos. I mean, like photos are the one thing that people like rush and get when their house is on fire, right? After
Mm.
their cat, they get their photo album.
Fair.
I have things like 10 or 12 pairs of point shoes for when I did ballet that I could never ever get rid. I mean, at the time I could never get rid of them. I brought one pair back with me on a trip, and that's probably enough. Like
Yeah.
I can probably just keep that one pair and get rid of the rest.
Fair enough. Okay, well, if we had to draw any conclusions, I mean, we did talk about this once in the past when it comes to journals. I
Oh
remember that
God.
because I remember different listeners writing in about their own quandaries about what to do with their journals and who's going
Yeah.
to want to read this stuff. Are they worth preserving? Will people want to read it after you die? And many of the people who wrote in concluded, no, they're not going to want to. Or I'm not going to want them to read it. It's either
See,
like they're not going to want to, or I'm not going to want them to read it. One of the two. It's private. I'm taking it with
it's
me.
private, but if I had a chance to read my mom's journals, I would be very excited to do so. Like I
Mm.
would love to read my mom's journal if she had kept journals, which I'm pretty sure she didn't. But I would have loved. I mean, I was always obsessed with my mother's childhood from the time I was a little girl. Like I was always like, "Tell me about when you were little. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Tell me the stories." And so I think that if she'd kept journals, I would have been way interested in reading them. And
Hmm.
not that necessarily she would have wanted me to, but I do think about that with my journals in Aurelio. I'm like, is there stuff in there that I would not want him to read? There's definitely some. There are definitely some.
Mm-hmm. That you would
There's this thing, Katie, called Swedish death cleaning. Have you ever heard about it?
Swedish death cleaning?
Yep.
Not off the top of my head. Please tell.
So Swedish death cleaning is when you go through your house with a thought in your mind, imagining the person after you die inheriting all of this stuff. And are they going to want this stuff? And I don't think it's something that you need to necessarily do when you're on your deathbed, right? The idea is you do it all throughout your life.
Yeah.
So you don't accumulate tons of stuff, but like not every single person, but the vast majority of people, when their parents pass away, they have to go through the very, very difficult and exhausting trial of going through their parents' stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people who have parents who are hoarders or not, maybe not hoarders, but in that have that tendency, pack rats, it's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming and devastating to them. And I don't think any of us want to leave that burden on anyone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is you do all of that before you die. And you know, you don't do it all at one time. You do it over a period of time. So you go through your house and you look at, you know, this random little thing that you think, okay, maybe this is valuable mildly, but
Mm-hmm.
then you think about it, you're like, well, you know what? Nobody's going to want this. My china, you know, this set of china that's like vaguely ugly.
Yeah.
No one's going to want this. No one's going to want this. I mean, and you just think about going to, you know, like estate sales or places, and you see the stuff, not even just at estate sales, but even just at like a shop that's selling, you know, used goods. So much of it, at least in Italy, maybe it's different in the States, but when you go to these, they're called mercatini. You just know that this is like some grandmother's stuff that she had. It was her, they were her prized possessions. And then as soon as her children inherited them, they immediately sold them because they don't want them.
Right. Right. Because
And
if
that's the stuff that ends up in the shop. A lot of stuff ends up in the dump because it's not even worth selling in a shop.
I mean, that's a whole other question about all the stuff that we buy and turn over in the course of a lifetime and like how much wreckage and garbage there is in that. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right because trends change and everybody has their own individual taste. It's like back in the day, I'm sure some of you listening, like you didn't get married without registering for a silver place setting sets. You know,
Mhm.
you didn't
Silver tea set.
yeah, I'm thinking of like the silverware, you know, like the how
Yeah.
you didn't get married without making sure you could serve 12, you know. And now hardly ever does anybody serve 12, you know.
Yeah.
And so you might have service for 12, but you use maybe service for 4 at the very most or maybe service for 6 or 8 like at the holidays. But service for 12 is pretty rare and it takes up a lot of space. But like all of that real silverware where you had to like polish it by hand once a month
Mm-mm.
or whatever, in this modern world, no matter how valuable that is, nobody wants that
No.
because nobody wants to take on the burden of polishing it. Or you just accept
Or even just the
now
space that it takes
the
up.
space. Yeah, the space. Or if you do want it, you never polish it and it's just you like that tarnished patina on it, you know. But yeah, it's like the changing trends. You know, one thing you always see here at estate sales, if you ever come to a estate sale of mine, you'll see it because I've inherited from my relatives, is little teacups. Little teacup. At one point, everybody had little teacups, full tea settings, or you'd collect them every time you traveled or something like that. And I love the idea of drinking out of a teacup, but the truth of the matter is I'm like sitting here drinking a cup of tea while I'm working. I'm not going to like continually refill and be like, you know, just like these little
No, and then
tiny
it's empty.
cups, you know. I just, as pretty as they are, you just don't do it, you know,
I
anymore.
know.
So yeah, that's a whole other thing. I mean, we're going to have to leave it there, but that's another problem I'm facing because I am the historian of the family. And
Mhm.
like the things that have made it through generation after generation after generation after generation, a lot of that is at my house. And
Wow.
what are we going to do with it? You know, I think it should be passed on for generations and generations more. But is anybody going to want it? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah. All right.
And
Well,
there's no easy answer.
there's no easy answer. So, yes, if you're listening and you have thoughts, feel free to send them to us. If you're listening ad free on Patreon, you can make the comments right below the episode. Or you can send us an email, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. We always love reading your letters. And if we get enough of them, sometimes we put them all together and share them on the show. Also, here's an exciting thing. Tiffany and I have decided that yes, indeed, we are going to take a trip to Rome this year with our listeners. Tiffany, why don't you lay out what we're doing a little differently this year?
Well, this year we have decided to move the trip up to November, and it's going to be the first week in November, literally the 1st to the 7th of November, which is still a really temperate time in Rome. But it's also just a slightly spookier time because, of course, November 1st is All Saints' Day, November 2nd is All Souls' Day. And these holidays are very important in Rome and in Italy in general. And so we've decided that on one of the days of the week, not necessarily on All Souls' Day, but we will be doing a night tour of haunted locations in Rome and other areas of Rome that have sort of dark and
Sinister.
suspenseful story and sinister. There you go.
Yeah.
Sinister stories attached to them. And so we'll be doing that. So instead of doing 5 morning tours, which is how we usually do it, we'll be doing 4 morning tours. And one of the days we'll be doing an evening tour after the sun has gone down.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. I'm super excited about it. And I think it'll be a really good time to get out of town. I feel like it's really nice right now, at least it has been for me, once we decided we were going to do it, to have some plans on the horizon and to be looking forward to this kind of new tour that we're going to do, because we have not just the night tour, we have a bunch of other little new ideas. So we're going to experiment around a little bit. Also, I should mention, because I know a lot of you listening have been very interested in the Rome tours the last 3 years that we've done it. And you're always like, well, I'll get to it next year. I'll get to it next year. This year, we can say definitively that we will not be doing this in 2027. So if you've been putting it off, thinking like, oh, they'll just do it again. They'll just do it again. I'll get around to it. This is your year to stop putting it off, because we're not doing it next year. So this is your chance, really. And we can give you so much more information if you send us an email, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. We'll send you the dates, the information, the cancellation policy, all of the good stuff. Or you can also go to our website, thebittersweetlife.net. Links in the show notes, of course. And you can read all about it there, too, as well as see pictures of past guests experiencing what it's like to travel through Rome with us, and actually read some of their firsthand opinions about what this tour was like. And so you don't have to just hear it from us. You can hear it from people who have talked about it after actually going on the tour. So check it out, thebittersweetlife.net. All right, and we'll leave it there. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye. We welcome your feedback, show topic ideas, or questions. You can always reach the show by emailing bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com or through thebittersweetlife.net.